Hi, welcome to Funny Reading of Classics. My name is John.H.Watson, and I'm the narrator of this video. After the case of a scandal of Bohemia, I occasionally accompanied with my friend, Sherlock Holmes, in handling several cases, including the event I want to talk about today, which I named the Red-Headed League. This story consists of 3 chapters, and the first chapter is titled, Our Red-Headed Client. Now, let's dive straight into the story. One day in the autumn of last year, a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair, named Mr. Jabez Wilson, came round to Baker Street. I had learned quite a bit about the fashion of my companion, but when I tried to apply them to take a good look at our visitor and the dirty, wrinkled newspaper he offered, all I could discern was that our client was an average, commonplace British tradesman, nothing particularly useful.
Beyond the obvious facts that he has at some time done manual labor, that he takes snuff, that he is a Freemason, that he has been in China, and that he has done a considerable amount of writing lately, I can deduce nothing else.
Noticing my questioning glances, Holmes smiled, and then showcased his extraordinary observation and precise deduction, leaving our client started up in his chair.
How, in the name of good fortune, did you know all that, Mr. Holmes?
As a rule, Holmes was right again, which earned him the respect and trust of Mr. Jabez Wilson. Our client then began to narrate the peculiar events that had led him to seek our assistance. Everything began with a recruitment advertisement published in the newspaper.
To the Red-Headed League, there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind and above the age of 21 years are eligible. Apply in person on Monday at 11 o'clock to Duncan Ross at the offices of the League, 7 Pope's Court, Fleet Street.
For a struggling pawnshop owner, becoming a member of the Red-Headed Club was splendid pay and very little to do, so he immediately became interested in this job. Especially his hair happened to meet the requirements.
I never hope to see such a sight as that again, Mr. Holmes.
This was the scene Mr. Wilson saw when he went to apply for the job. Countless red-headed folk had tramped into the city to answer the advertisement. Of course, he was fortunate enough to get this vacancy in the end. The responsibility was quite simple, even monotonous. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day, Mr. Wilson was to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica at the designated location. During this period, he was not to budge from the office. Neither sickness nor business, nor anything else was to disturb him. As long as he complied with the regulations, he would receive £4 a week. However, even the slightest violation of the rules would result in the immediate loss of his position. This whole affair naturally made Mr. Wilson doubt, but once he got to work and received his deserved compensation, he gradually began to believe how lucky he was and hoped to continue doing it forever. 8 weeks passed away like this, and then suddenly the whole business came to an end.
To an end?
Yes, sir, and no later than this morning. I went to my work as usual at 10 o'clock, but the door was shut and locked, with a little square of cardboard hammered onto the middle of the panel with a tack. It read in this fashion:
The Red-Headed League is dissolved, October 9th, 1890. After we learned about the details of the incident, we moved on to the next chapter, titled The On-Site Investigation. Well, setting aside some unpleasant intervals, Mr. Wilson continued to share his actions after he found the card upon the door. It was only then that Mr. Wilson thought to look into the background of the Red-Headed League, but that Mr. Duncan Ross, who had employed him, used a fake name, and no one knew where he had gone. This realization was deeply saddening for our client, as it meant he would forever lose this well-paying job. Of course, Mr. Wilson didn't actually suffer any real loss. On the contrary, according to Holmes, he actually gained quite a lot from this extraordinary league.
You are, as I understand, richer by some £30, to say nothing of the minute knowledge which you have gained on every subject which comes under the letter A.
No, sir, but I want to find out about them, and who they are, and what their object was in playing this prank, if it was a prank, upon me.
Seeing Mr. Wilson's determination, Holmes naturally didn't want to give up on such a case, which was most refreshingly unusual. So, he inquired about another man of interest, someone who could easily be overlooked.
What is he like, this Vincent Spaulding, the assistant of yours who first called your attention to the advertisement?
Small, stout-built, very quick in his ways, no hair on his face, though he's not short of 30. Has a white splash of acid upon his forehead.
Holmes sat up in his chair in considerable excitement.
I thought as much. Have you ever observed that his ears are pierced for earrings?
Yes, sir. He told me that a gypsy had done it for him when he was a lad.
After obtaining the desired information, Holmes sinking back in deep thought.
That will do, Mr. Wilson. I shall be happy to give you a conclusion upon the subject in the course of a day or two.
After Mr. Wilson left, Holmes spent nearly an hour in thought, before suddenly having an inspiration. With that, we set out together for an on-site investigation. We came to the place where our red-headed client carried on his business. Sherlock Holmes stopped in front of it, with his head on one side, and looked it all over, with his eyes shining brightly between puckered lids. Then he visited to Mr. Wilson's pawnbroker shop, and, having thumped vigorously upon the pavement with his stick 2 or 3 times, finally, he knocked on the door and, under the pretense of asking for directions, managed to catch a glimpse of Mr. Spaulding, who turned out to be a bright-looking, clean-shaven young fellow. The investigation of the first half of Saxe-Coburg Square by Holmes was now complete. We then continued to explore the latter half of the square, during which Holmes meticulously noted every shop we passed. Eventually, we arrived at the Coburg branch of the City and Suburban Bank. At this moment, a look of relaxation and satisfaction finally appeared on his face.
You want to go home, no doubt, Doctor. This business at Coburg Square is serious, and I shall want your help tonight. There may be some little danger, so kindly put your army revolver in your pocket.
After concluding today's search, while we were both enjoying a rare moment of leisure, Holmes's expression suddenly became extremely serious and solemn. From his words, it was evident that he saw clearly not only what had happened, but what was about to happen, while to me the whole business was still confused and grotesque. I shall be at Baker Street at 10. Even so, I agreed to him without any hesitation. On the way home, however, I tried to puzzle the whole matter out, but gave it up in despair and set it aside until night should bring an explanation. Now, let's delve into the third chapter, the conspiracy behind the Red-Headed League. I had to say that Holmes was exceptionally meticulous in his preparations for this operation. In addition to myself, he enlisted the help of 2 others. One was Jones, the official police agent with whom we had previously collaborated on the Sign of 4 case, and the other was Jones's friend, Mr. Merriweather, who was equally skilled in chasing.
We're hunting in couples again, Doctor.
After a brief round of introductions, Jones greeted me warmly, and we exchanged updates on our respective situations. From this conversation, I learned that he was currently on the trail of a young man, John Clay. This fellow was particularly cunning and sharp, always managing to slip away and evade the grasp of Scotland Yard. Holmes, however, assured Jones that this troublesome matter would be resolved during our upcoming operation. I suddenly recalled how Holmes had shown particular interest in the young man who served as Mr. Wilson's assistant during their conversation and throughout the investigation. It dawned on me that this might not have been mere curiosity on Holmes's part, but rather a critical piece of the puzzle that had now fallen into place. Led by Mr. Merryweather, the bank director of one of London's principal banks, we descended into the cellar of the City and Suburban Bank, which was piled all round with crates and massive boxes.
All of this is our French gold. We borrowed 30,000 Napoleons from the Bank of France some months ago, and we've had several warnings that an attempt might be made on it.
This is the very object we need to guard, and it is precisely what John Clay has gone to great lengths to obtain. While waiting for John Clay and his accomplice, Holmes began to explain his entire deduction behind the whole matter.
It was perfectly obvious from the first that the only possible object of this rather fantastic business of the advertisement of the League and the copying of that encyclopedia must be to get this not overbright pawnbroker out of the way for a number of hours every day. So, for one of the coolest and most daring criminals in London, such an elaborate plan clearly aimed at something significant. Considering that he spent most of his working hours in the cellar, it wasn't hard to deduce that he was obviously conducting some excavation work underground. Therefore, I immediately went to the site to determine his target. After confirming that the City and Suburban Bank was adjacent to our client's premises, and particularly after learning from Jones that a large shipment of gold was about to be stored there, the answer became quite clear.
After Holmes gradually unveiled the full scope of this brilliantly devised case, I couldn't help but once again marvel at his unparalleled deductive abilities. Jones, however, wore a mixed expression of frustration and admiration. Mr. Merryweather, who had never encountered Holmes before, looked utterly shocked, struggling to comprehend that his bank had attracted such a patient and formidable gang of thieves. As everyone was lost in their thoughts, a faint glimmer of light suddenly appeared through the wall of the cellar. Holmes quickly gave us a sharp glance, signaling us to take our positions. Moments later, John Clay, brimming with anticipation, broke through the wall, only to find us already waiting for him, ready to foil his meticulously planned heist. And so, the case of the Red-Headed League came to an end. We successfully apprehended John Clay and his red-haired accomplice. Everyone involved had their own reward. Mr. Merryweather and his bank were spared from a significant loss. Jones finally captured the criminal he had been chasing for so long, and I gained a brilliantly compelling story to share. As for Holmes, he enjoyed a brief respite from the dullness of ordinary life. That concludes the entire story of the Red-Headed League. I hope my description has conveyed the charm of this story to you. Until the next story, see you then.